Thank you everyone for attending this public meeting. We are here as partners to the City of Dearborn Heights. My name is Samantha DeWester. I'm the General Counsel and Project Director for Beam Longus and Neff. We are based out of Indianapolis, but we have an office here in Michigan as well. And my colleagues, Lindsay and Holly, they can introduce themselves as well. They've put this nice presentation together for this morning's meeting and this evening's meeting. There's another meeting tonight at 6 at the police station. And if everyone has signed in, there are question cards to please fill out. I'll collect those from you, and then we will ask and answer the questions at the end of the presentation. Presentation's about 25-30 minutes. So those folks at home, you'll see a PowerPoint. You'll see it here streaming live. So that's kind of how this process is going to flow. But we are working with the city to help them manage some of these potential projects and fixes for the city of Dearborn Heights. And if you haven't taken the survey online, it's online. It'll be open for the next couple of weeks after today's meeting. We have paper copies. You could fill it out today, or please jump online, give the city your input about what is important to you here in Dearborn Heights and what they should be focusing on that is important to you. And then we work with them to help make that happen. So Lindsay, Holly, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. I'm Holly Stefanski. I'm working with BLN and the city to kind of organize the utilization of the ARPA funds for the city. This is Lindsay Stefanski. Yes, we are sisters.
Yes. So Lindsay Stefanski, and I am working with BLN and the city in the capacity as really focusing on the outreach component. So making sure that they're surveyed together so we can receive some of the input from community members themselves, and then report that information back to the city. And so this presentation today, we'll go ahead and jump right in. This is just kind of a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So first, I'm going to give just a kind of a high-level overview for those of you who might know just a little bit about ARPA or know nothing about ARPA at all. So wanting to just give an overview of what ARPA is, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper into how ARPA impacts Dearborn Heights, and then talk a little bit about some next steps as it relates to ARPA. So some basic ARPA information for you. ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act, and it was signed into law in March of 2021. And so it was a $1.9 trillion package, really meant to give some financial aid to a number of different entities, schools, nonprofits, basically anybody who might have been impacted negatively by COVID-19. So all in all, there were $350 billion fiscal recovery funds for state and local governments. So one of those state and local governments, as you know, Dearborn Heights. And so Dearborn Heights received roughly $24.3 million. And so earmarked to date, 2.2 million of those 24.3 million have been used towards the revenue replacement for the 2020 and 2021 years. And so the total remaining allocation is right there about 22.1 million.
And we're going to go into a little bit further detail in a couple of slides to explain what revenue loss replacement is, just so you know. That's probably not a familiar term to a lot of folks here, but we'll explain that shortly.
Okay, so ARPA is not just free money. There is a lot of federal oversight. There's a very specific time frame during which funds need to be used or at least allocated, so making a decision about what those projects are going to be and what those funds will be used for. And there are definitely some required reporting implications that apply to ARPA. And so all of those reports then are distributed publicly in a lot of cases, and then also go back to the government. So making sure that those ARPA funds are appropriated in the correct ways, which we'll dig into further as well. And so there have also been a lot of changes to ARPA since 2021 when that act first came into law. And so one of those is what's called the final rule. Holly can talk more about that if anybody's interested. But that's something that impacts how those funds can be spent. And those changes to the final rule were actually made just through last April. And so there have been several different iterations of ARPA, different iterations of what that final rule is, which all impacts how funds can be spent. And so we'll take a look at what those kinds of buckets of money or the 5 different expenditure categories under which those recovery funds for state and local governments can be utilized. And so those 5 main categories include revenue replacement, essential worker premium pay, broadband infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure, and public health and wellness. And so we'll dive deeper into each of those categories. So the first is revenue replacement. And this really is focusing on anything that was lost by the city, and so recovering some of those funds that were lost due to COVID-19. So as you might recognize, a lot of places were shut down all over the place. And so that was money that the city generally would have been getting from folks coming through and eating or visiting the city, and that couldn't happen during the lockdown and just subsequently because of COVID-19. And so the final rule stipulates that cities can allocate up to $10 million of that total ARPA fund allotment to revenue replacement as one of those categories.
Yeah, there's a stipulation that had, initially it was just a formula, which is pretty complicated, but thankfully in that revised or final interim rule that Lindsay was mentioning, there were some added provisions, realizing the struggles with smaller municipalities. Keep in mind that a lot of different cities and states got the same funds. They're all kind of in the same bucket under ARPA, and they're all different. So we're following the same rules in one sense that states and larger municipalities are. So in order to simplify things for smaller municipalities, they built in some flexibility that said instead of doing this complicated calculation, we're going to simplify things and just say you can use up to $10 million for revenue replacement. Then just to expand a little bit on what revenue replacement is and what that can be used for. So as Lindsay was mentioning, there were a lot of lost public funds during the pandemic for all, a multitude of reasons. And so this kind of bucket of allowable uses is designed to really kind of, to put it simply, backfill everything that was lost during that time period. And this is the bucket that essentially what it comes down to is being able to supplant your typical government operations, things that you would normally pay for that's not supplemental to those operations. You can use these funds for those purposes. So the city's allotment, as we saw in the original or a couple slides ago, of the 24 million, 10 million is the city's electing to use the 10 million for revenue replacement, which is typical. Pretty much every municipality is going to obviously use that for revenue replacement first because that's the least restrictive category and can be used for pretty much anything. So that leaves about 14 million, roughly 14 million to allocate for these other uses that we'll dive into.
Yes, thanks. Okay, so the next category is essential worker premium pay. And so as you all might know, a number of workers continued to provide services well throughout the pandemic. So emergency services, those that focus on the health and well-being of communities. And so this category affords the option to compensate these employees using ARPA funding. And so the essential workers eligible for premium pay are classified actually within the Act. And so all of that information can be found by digging kind of deeper into what the ARPA technicalities look like in terms of how to determine who is an essential worker as it relates to this particular category of ARPA funding. The next category is broadband infrastructure. And this category supports all of the improvements that could be made to digital equity of residents, business owners, so making sure that everybody has equal and good access to internet and Wi-Fi, especially for those in disinvested neighborhoods. So making it more equitable, especially as we think back on how COVID impacted those who worked and maybe were sent home from work. So making sure that people were able to access the internet for work purposes, for school purposes. So a lot of children were out of school there for a pretty long while and had to go and attend school still via Zoom. And so This is one of the things that came up during that time period where now this is a category that can be used to make some improvements to that infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a good point too, to kind of remember when these funds were first when the act was first passed back in 2021, and then, throughout 2022, there were a lot of changes and developments with the pandemic, and so it's been kind of fluid in a sense of the proper uses or the most beneficial uses of the funds as things change and migrate. So interesting to see all of the activity over the past couple of years.
So the next category is water and sewer infrastructure. And so this category allows different municipalities to make necessary investments to make improvements to access to clean drinking water, for example, reducing flooding by making some infrastructure improvements, pipes, et cetera, managing and treating stormwater. So one of the examples that in Michigan is, creating an above-ground tank to help alleviate some of the flooding in particular areas of Michigan. And so some of these, relate back to ARPA funding, and then especially the city of Dearborn. I know taking a look at some of the survey results myself, that I know from also working closely with the city over the past couple of months that they've been exploring avenues for the Ecorse Creek came up a lot, Rouge River, and they do have grant applications out to help mitigate some of the issues related to those. And so not only looking at ARPA funds in this particular category, but really being diligent and good stewards of ARPA funding and their own general funding to take a look collectively at all of the funding that's available to help mitigate some of these issues. And in fact, I don't know if anybody saw it, but just wanted to mention that Governor Whitner actually just last week proposed spending more than $500 million for lead service line removals across the whole state of Michigan. And so this is something that's been on the radar for a while, and then this ARPA category kind of gives another opportunity or another option of funding when taking a look collectively of all that's available to help solve some of the water and sewer infrastructure issues. So the final category is public health and wellness. And this is a fairly broad category. And doing some research about what other Michigan, in particular Michigan municipalities have used this category of spending on, it really extends to a number of different positive impacts to communities. And so financial support for parks and recreation could fall under this category, wellness initiatives through the arts, and so creating opportunities for children or for arts expression for communities really all builds into mental health and wellness. Resources such as counseling facilities, all of these things aim to create a healthier and well community. And then I know Holly mentioned too that it's been very fluid in the ways that when these categories first came to light, that ways to interpret or ways to spend as it relates to these certain categories. And so in the early stages when cities were spending right away, when they got their allocations, a lot of the health and wellness in this category were used to purchase PPE, create or transform buildings into testing sites. And so we might not see as much of that as time has progressed. And so that's when we've seen the emergence of some of these other areas of spending as it relates to this category, and using that money for some different things that are still within the health and wellness perspective.
Yeah, it's important to remember that this category, while it's not necessarily that obvious by just looking at the broad title of it, does include response to negative economic impacts, which is really what most of us are feeling at this point across the nation. So like Lindsay said, kind of in juxtaposition to when all of this first rolled out in 21 throughout 22, where it was kind of first focused on immediate, health needs, kind of looking at it from a lens of negative economic impact response at this point.
And so those were the 5 categories of spending under which ARPA funds are appropriate and permitted. And however, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of governmental oversight and restrictions, reporting. And so did want to touch on just some of the limitations of ARPA funding. There are a few categories for which ARPA funds are either prohibited or could have a potentially negative long-term financial impact. And so an example of, I just want to start with the unsustainable projects. I think that's the one that's a little bit murky of the three there on the screen. And so just an example of that tangibly is, taking some funds and creating a new position. So hiring for new positions, and the way that that's unsustainable is ARPA it's a finite set of funds. And so if we hire somebody to a position, we're gonna have to, that money runs out from ARPA, and the city then would be responsible for sustaining that position over time. And so that's just an example of an unsustainable project as it relates to these three. Debt payments are also something that is not permitted, and then also pension contributions. So these are the areas that ARPA funds cannot be appropriated. Okay, so we've completed the first portion, which really just gives kind of a broad overview of the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. And so now we're going to take a look at more specifically how Dearborn Heights is managing and planning to use their ARPA funding. So starting here with just a general timeline of the city and the work that they've been doing to take a look really diligently at not only ARPA, but also taking a look at more broadly what the community needs and how ARPA can help fill some of the gaps. And so in November of last year, 2022, is when we started working very closely with the city and its departments to really learn a lot about what the city needs are, what types of work they've already done in terms of exploring other avenues for revenue to complete some of the projects and to those priority projects. And so we continued from that starting point in November even up through now. We've been continuing, we have weekly meetings with the city, and we have, we've brought in some different partners from not only the city, but some other, just to learn everything that we possibly can to help them make and support the best decisions. In January is when we started the feedback collection process, and so we'll dig into that a little bit deeper in a moment. February 15th is today, so we're holding these public forum meetings just to connect better with the community members and make sure that everybody has a better understanding of ARPA itself is really the goal here. And then February 28th, just a friendly reminder that will be the final day to complete the survey that's available online. We also have those print copies of the survey out here today for those of you who prefer to do that print form. But we do value your feedback, and so we want to make that as available as possible.
Yeah, their printed surveys are over there, and you can either, if you do fill them out here after we're through, you can either leave those here with us, or there's a box by the mayor's office that you can drop it in there, or if you do fill it out and come back, that's fine. And there's also, I believe there's a QR code that's sitting out, like as you walk out, right by the door there, so if you'd prefer to put some more thought into it or take time and come back to it later, you can always scan that QR code and then fill that out online, and there's a link on the website too. So yes, a couple of different options there. Okay, so taking a look back to, if you want to go back one, yeah, oh, sorry.
Wrong way.
Okay, one more. There we go. Okay, so taking a look back when we started working with the city pretty closely. So as you can imagine, it's very difficult to decide how to spend a large sum of money and assess the needs of the community members. And so that's why we started this relationship where we can support the city in that process. And so there are a number of different, again, as you can imagine, competing ideas, competing priorities, and only a limited amount of funds. And so the city, as I mentioned earlier, has also been really trying to explore funding sources outside of the one-time ARPA allocation to make sure that they are, trying to explore every avenue to fulfill as many of those priority projects' needs as possible. And so some of those include, opportunities through FEMA, as I mentioned earlier, exploring some of at the state level that relate to the water and sewer infrastructure. And so they've been very methodical and in determining the ways to maximize the ARPA impact and ensure just really good stewardship of funds and taxpayer dollars. And so up through the present day, so as I mentioned, we've been meeting with the city representatives. We've been soliciting feedback from community members, from department directors. And so a portion of our work in supporting the city has been trying to identify the priorities per department, and because everybody, views priorities through their own very unique lens. And so making sure that we're talking to as many people as possible to see, what their viewpoints are. And I will say, though, through all of the meetings that we've had with all of the department heads, everybody is very passionate about having the most positive impact through their own unique lens on the community itself. So whether it be Parks and Recreation, Treasurer's Office, everybody is really focused on what can we do to make things better for as many people as possible. Okay, and so in January, there we go. Okay, thank you. And so this is just a highlight of all of the folks that we have met with so far. So you can see, everyone from the director for the IT office. We've met with our Parks and Recreation folks, police department, fire department. So trying to meet with as many people as possible. And just like we've done today too, it was really helpful to give kind of that one-on-one overview of what ARPA is. And so started with that kind of first portion of our presentation today is a similar approach we took to these meetings as well. And then also, again, as I mentioned, discussing some of those through the department lens, what priorities and needs are for the city. Okay, so that brings us to where we had our, in January, we started that feedback collection with the survey as well. And so, okay, I'll just talk through it's the January 2023 feedback collection, just a note about that of, the kind of the why behind the survey. And so I know we've mentioned the survey several times and some of you might have already gone online and completed it. But another reason for that, though, is, as the different department heads have various priorities and view things through that unique lens, we recognize that community members are very similar in that way, depending on experiences in the city of Dearborn Heights, identity, location, affiliation. And so all of these things were really important to collect through that survey. Okay, and so again, today, 2 public forum meetings today. You are attending one of them. The other is later on this evening, and so we will be back in a different location to provide the same presentation and information. And really just wanting to focus on, again, that high-level overview of ARPA to make sure there's a general understanding and awareness, and then also bringing awareness to the survey that it is available. Great, and then finally, that feedback survey, again, it closes on February 28th. And so now we're going to talk more about the survey, but we're going to talk about some preliminary results. And so at the time that I pulled this presentation together, it was February 3rd, we had 139 responses to the survey, which is great. And so wanted to give just kind of a brief overview of the information that we have collected so far. As if you have seen the survey, you'll know that all of the demographic questions were optional, but wanted to share those just for due diligence here. Slight majority of those identifying as female compared with male. And you'll see that the respondent age distribution is pretty, it's pretty heavy on the 60 plus and 50 to 59 age range, but there is a good range. As you can see that we had a few respondents who were in that 18 to 20 range, so some of our younger community members as well. Respondent relationship to the city. Again, as I mentioned, this was important for us to collect just because, everybody's going to have a unique perspective based on their positioning within and around the city. And so we were pleased to see, though, that we had a very high response rate for those who are residents of the city. Here you can see our respondent education level. That was just another demographic information piece that we collected. And then also the respondent ethnicity. Again, these were all optional questions, so not all of the respondents had completed these portions of the survey itself. All right, and finally, this was the one multiple choice question here that was important, is really identifying of those 5 categories that we discussed earlier for ARPA funding, which are most important to community members. And so as you can see here, the highest priority is the water and sewer infrastructure of those 5 different categories. And you can see too, the lowest at the other end is the broadband connectivity. We also added an open-ended question, wanted to hear just more personalized from the city ideas for how the ARPA funding should be allocated. And I pulled a few responses just to highlight that there's a broad range. That large one there over on the right-hand side of your screen, it touches on almost every single one of the 5 categories. And then we also have a range where that first one there on the far left touches on the police and fire departments, recognizing that they were on the front lines, and so that ties back to the category for essential workers. The one just below that mentions clean drinking water and lead issues, which ties back to the category around sewer and water infrastructure. Parks and pools and planned activities, that one you'll recognize ties back into that health and wellness category. And then neighborhood streets, that's something too that really ties back into a lot of the different buckets, infrastructure, lost revenue. And so all of the different categories that we discussed earlier are represented in the feedback, and these are just a few examples. So finally, we're going to talk a little bit about next steps. And so the February 15th today marks kind of a head into the next part or next phase of the city's ARPA planning. And so February 8th, that survey will close, and that way will be, I'm sorry, February 28th, thank you. That survey is going to close, and we'll start collecting and sorting through all of that data. And in March is when we'll continue again to meet with the city and compile, review that feedback together, identify some priority projects, and then also start working on an implementation plan for what those priority projects are. And so that is going to conclude kind of our portion of the presentation today. I know Sam's going to try to get some of those feedback cards that might still be out so we can dig into some questions that you all might have. And just want to say thank you for listening to me sit up here and talk for the last half hour or so.
If anybody has comment cards, or Sam's collecting them over on the side. Sam, do you have cards that we can pass around in case folks do have questions that they want to write down?
Who's Sam? I don't know who Sam is. Yeah.
Everybody about that has anything they want to ask? So Mariana, did we get any the Zoom call?
No, nothing on Zoom.
Okay.
But for those of you in Zoom, feel free to either put your questions in a chat or raise your hand so that we can unmute you and have you ask those questions.
So then, Sam, we can probably get started if you want to. throw the first one out there. I think you have, in order to, for the folks on the Zoom call to hear you, I think you gotta be by the mic though.
I will come join you again, Mr. Mayor. Huh? That's right. Well, I am an attorney. Okay, well, we will start off with a fairly easy one, and I probably should have done a little bit better job of describing in more detail who we are and what we do. So the first question is, tell my age. How many cities of our size are you helping with ARPA, and what can we spend from this money? So Be Long It's Enough has been around for about 80 years. We are in 17 to 20 different states and the Caribbean. We also have a Canadian company that we merged with last year. We have done a multitude of projects around the United States and in the Caribbean, including the Gordie Howe Bridge up here. But we've traditionally been a civil engineering firm. Over the past 5 to 7 years, we've gotten more involved with consulting with municipalities or state entities, whether it's agencies or the states themselves, and helping them with projects and case management of a wide variety of projects, right? We are running, Be Long It's Enough is running the Indiana Homeowner Assistance Fund. I personally got that stood up. I was the project director over, it's about a $200 million program that the state of Indiana received funds for under the American Rescue Plan to keep people in their homes. So we built the whole team, built the entire system, got it up and running, and so we are still running that currently. So that's a little bit about us and what we do. So to answer the question, I believe it was yours, sir, we are helping different cities, municipalities, and states in a variety of ways with American Rescue Plan funds, but also there is, and I don't want to confuse the issue, the infrastructure bill, IIJA, that is pushing out money for lots of different infrastructure projects. The Inflation Reduction Act, which is pushing out money for a variety of other things, mainly energy and greening and things like that, that are coming to states and cities. So we are advising a few different cities in Michigan, but also the state of Indiana and a couple of different states across the nation on how you can spend these dollars and the best way to spend them, obviously with, you know, what you guys want, but what buckets of money are allowable, because there are some very definitive definitions on what is allowable and what is not, and we certainly don't want anybody to have the feds come claw back a bunch of money from everybody. So we advise everyone, the cities, the towns, or the states, on how best to get the biggest bang for the buck with all the different dollars coming out. So
Yeah, and it's been pretty common too that, you know, municipalities and states across the country have been reaching out to outside sources. You know, this is an unprecedented amount of money that cities and states they're getting, that, and a lot of them don't have the built-in personnel and staffing to, you know, manage or maintain their fiscal due diligence as it relates to those funds as they should be with their current staff. So it's been very common that we've seen an outreach across the country to you know, professionals that work with grants to help them, you know, first of all, have the capacity to be able to manage and administer the grants. Not only that, but also to maintain compliance, because a lot of there's a lot of strings attached, as we mentioned. The funds have to be used in a certain manner. There's reporting on the back end of things, so to make sure all of those requirements are being met as well as important too. So.
Yep, all excellent points, and I'll piggyback on that by saying, you know, like she just said, that most government entities cannot handle the influx of cash that the feds are pushing down and turn that around into projects with the very specific timelines the feds have put on the money. So most entities, cities, towns, states have hired outside folks because they already get chunks of grant money, but this is grant money on steroids, so they want to make sure it's used properly, reporting is met, there isn't fraud, waste, and abuse, and so it's more than government employees can handle. There's not enough staff, and you should not use the money to create staff that, you know, the grant ends in, you know, 2 or 4 years that won't be funded for. So very good points, Holly. So, sir, did that answer your questions?
Yes, but I do have a follow-up question. How many cities, if you can give us,
I'm sorry, can I ask you to come up to the podium?
you sure can. I was here last night and I'm here in the morning. Good morning. Okay, Zuhair Abdelhaq, resident of Dearborn Heights, and I lived in Minneapolis for a couple and a half years. The mic is on? Okay. How many cities in Michigan you have serviced or contracted with of our size? I'm trying to see if the amount of money we have, 24 million, is justifiable to spend over $1 million to a consultant to teach us how to do things and where to spend the money. How many cities of our size, 60,000 residents, you have contracted with? If you have of...
I don't have the exact number. There are several.
Okay.
We're not $1 million contract. I don't know. Could be somebody else. That's not us.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm just trying to justify the money we spend on
Yeah,
this
and
project.
within the grant monies themselves, the feds specify the allowable amount that municipalities can use for administrative purposes, meaning to run these types of things, get the word out, communications, it's capped. So it's not just unlimited amounts of money.
Okay, if you can just please post on your page or give the mayor or his chief of staff name of some cities, I would like to contact them to see really how you done in their cities. This way will help us fill out the survey too.
Okay, thank you.
Samantha, if I may, again, this company was selected through a public bid process. All of their background information, projects, reviews from other cities were all posted when we selected them as our vendors. So I'd be happy to share with you the bid results from when we went out for bids for the management company for the ARPA funds.
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. And I'm going to make sure that everybody knows Mariana, who's the chief of staff for the mayor, and Mr. Dibb, who's the head engineer. We've had lots of conversations over the past few months. Next question, will some surveys be disclosed this evening? I guess it's going to be open. The link will be open for the next 2 weeks. So we encourage everyone to tell their friends, their families, their neighbors, whomever, to complete the survey. There's a paper version of the survey right there. You can fill it out and we will turn it in for you today. I know that Lindsay and Holly just went over some of the preliminary feedback. So that's what the surveys, in the slides, and we could make that available. There's copies of the slides, the slide deck over there. We could make that available in a link, but it has the exact data of what we've received thus far. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Who filled them out? I don't know nothing about it.
The surveys? We can, I think we have a sheet with the, I guess what would be your preference to fill it out? We have the hard copies here.
Sure, that's
Or
right.
there's a QR code for the website, or you can just go directly to the website and there's a link on there. So one of us can help you after.
You said there was 1,200 responses?
We did 139 as of February 3rd.
That's because nobody knows about it. I don't know about it.
It's on the city's website, and I believe the city has put it out through the council and other partners and whatnot. So, and on their social media communications. But if you, I think you snuck in the side door. If you want to sign in, it's right over here, the survey, and we will be glad to turn that in for you.
Okay. But I'm just saying, you thought 139 was a good response?
Yeah, unfortunately, any kind of surveys that you do, there's, your response rate compared to the eligible respondents is low, unfortunately. That's just typical of data collection. That's why we're all great, happy to see that you guys are all here, and spending your time trying to learn more about it and get and if you guys can spread the word too, let people know that it's out there. That's really the best way, is word of mouth to, encourage others to.
Yeah, I wanted to add, so we have been mentioning about the survey since January in every single council meeting. It has also been on the press release on our local newspapers. It's on our website, and it has been on social media multiple times. We have reached out to the superintendents in all of the schools who have also helped us share the word. But as we mentioned, we do need your help, and we've been asking for it in every council meeting. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, help us get more survey results.
Thank you. How and when will the funds be distributed? That is a complicated answer, and it's not necessarily one that is the city's. It depends. how they've applied for funds through the state's getting funds from the feds, the states that pass through to Dearborn Heights. So the city has to make, their timeline and what they want decision-wise after the responses from you guys. And maybe Mariana, you want to answer this question? It's all going to be dependent on what the survey results say. And then as money is made available, obviously they have some ARPA money in their account. But as I said, there is a lot more money flowing down. So if they can get projects paid for from multiple sources on a bigger level, I think they're probably going to make sure that that's done.
Yeah, as far as timeline, ideally, we would know what the results are and allocate those funds sooner rather than later. But again, we're just seeing how things go. Things change every day. As some of you may know from last night's meeting, there is now an additional $10 million that is going to be used for the Ecorse Creek. So that changes our plans a little bit with regards to what we were planning to do with ARPA. So again, things change every day, but we will try to have a plan. Hopefully by the budget season. So when we're doing the budget hearings, we'll talk about the preliminary ideas that we have for those. And after that, of course, we have to allocate the funds by 2024. So we don't have a lot of time left to make those decisions.
And also, one of the other things that we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize the usage of the ARPA money. So there's other grants that we're applying for. For example, yesterday we applied for another grant. So we'd want to use all the money in one location. We want to make sure that we maximize. So there's certain things that we talked about. Well, first, I want to thank Mariana and Mr. Deeb. They've been working on this for almost 2 years. So I appreciate you guys, all the hard work. I know Mr. Deeb has been engaged. He's actually talking to different entities, trying to see what we can do with the money. And also Mariana, for her help, talking to we have our elected officials from the state, congressional delegates that also Wayne County, trying to help us get other funding. So with that, you say, for example, you get $1 million you can use from the ARPA money, you might try to get like 3-4 million or maybe more from other entities that we can utilize for a particular project. So this is what we're trying to use. One of the things is there's a lot of communities that actually used most of their ARPA money, but us, waiting this long has been a blessing because there's other things opened up, and also there's other funding is coming. We haven't seen it yet, but we're getting other funding as well. So we just want to make sure that we maximize the ARPA money with other funding that we're going to get through. I know Senator Santana, she's been amazing. She's trying to help us, even before she became our state senator, for this area. Not state, but state senator for Dearborn Heights. And also Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, Congressman Dingle. They've been very, very helpful trying to get us, funding. Also, Mr. Warren Evans from the county. And also State Rep Erin Burns, she just came on board, so she's trying to, help. In fact, she sent me an email yesterday about a fund that we might be able to tap into. So we have great working relationship with state level elected officials, and also we got Senator Stabeno's office reached out. We got Senator Peters also reached out. We met with them. They want to know what our requirements. There's a lot of things that the city of Dearborn Heights needs, and I think everybody from the elected officials, they already know what the city of Dearborn Heights needs. So again, I want to thank all three of you for being here, and please thank Jay as well. I know we've been talking to Jay for the last 1.5 to 2 years. So appreciate you guys doing this. This has been very informative. And also the last meetings that you guys have had with Mariana. So that, thank you for putting this data together.
Sure. No problem. Thank you. And happy to help. I also used to work for the city of Indianapolis, is where I live in the state. So I completely understand frustration trying to get things done. So we are here to help. Couple of questions about the survey. I think we could shore up. What is the survey, and who can, I guess, respond or write. Anybody, the survey's open to everyone. You don't need a Gmail address, which is the next question. Anybody that's in Dearborn Heights can respond to it. And the point is to collect data and make sure that we have a representation from as many people as possible that represent the community and get their thoughts. The survey asks questions specific to how do you think the city should use these funds? What are your thoughts? So it captures all of that so that they can make a decision based on what you are telling them in your input on how to use the funds and prioritize, because like any city, Dearborn Heights is not an anomaly. Lots of cities have priority lists that are 15 pages long. So there has to be a priority because the funds are not infinite, and they're not forever. So we got to figure out what we can fix right now that is the most urgent of needs.
I'm the one that asked that question because I had never heard of it. And I belong to both of our senior centers. I'm surprised there's not packets of them at both senior centers. You would have had 1,000 fill-outs by now, not 139. And the reason I asked about residents, because you said most of them were residents. I didn't know what you meant. I thought they'd all be.
Oh, yeah, the survey went out to everybody, so there's city employees.
Sorry, there's business owners
Yeah.
also.
Yes.
Oh.
They don't obviously live
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
city, there's
okay.
business owners and there's city
All right.
employees
I didn't think of
who are
that.
non-residents, so
So evidently the city owners know all about this, as mostly the residents don't.
I'm not sure our Parks and
But
Rec director.
it's still open if you want to. What's
I'm
your?
gonna fill it out. I'm gonna fill it out.
I'm happy to give you a stack if you want
I'll
to.
take some to our senior center.
Absolutely. And any other place you think that it should go, the link is going to be live for another 2 weeks. So there is ample time. We're doing this public meeting kind of in the middle of when it opened so that we could intentionally tell you to go fill out the survey. We've been trying to fire it out to everyone as much as possible. Obviously, everyone gets a lot of information intake regularly, so it could be lost in the shuffle. So that's why we brought copies, and that's why it's staying up.
Okay, good. Well, Nancy can do Eaton because they won't respond to me, but I will take some to Berwyn.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dolores.
Great.
thank you. Couple of questions about who are essential workers, where is this defined? I know this is too vague to give municipalities flexibility, but what are essential workers? What's premium pay? What threshold do they need to meet? So you guys can help me answer this as well, but it's also laid out in, the feds lay it out, and also the state lays it out. Essential workers typically have been police, fire, nurses, folks that have, well, they don't really include the city, but police, fire, EMS, yes. Because they never got time off. There was no work from home days for those folks. A lot of lawyers were considered essential, but you want to go ahead and respond to the.
Yeah, so as Sam mentioned, the act does actually define, and the final rule defines which employees are eligible to receive that premium pay, how much they can get. It could be used retrospectively, prospectively. It outlines a whole bunch of criteria and eligible uses for that are things that would fall into the category of premium pay. So what we can do is put it's like a good 2-pager that lists all the different buckets. That's probably yeah.
The list of employees.
Yeah, the list.
Overview of the final rule.
Yeah. So there's a really good 2-pager. It's not from the exact final rule, but it's a good summary that kind of breaks it down into less technical terms, I would say. But at the highest level, they're really looking at anybody that was the main criteria is that you have to have physical contact with the community. So it could essentially anybody that was working remotely would not be eligible. That's the broadest takeaway from it. But beyond that, there's the public. Yeah, here we pulled up. There's a good PDF, and we'll put this out on the website for ARPA.
Yeah.
But the main.
So I can go over just a few of the workers who are covered, just to give you a general idea. And then we will also post this to the ARPA website that's linked under the mayor's page on the Dearborn Heights site, so you all can take a look. But for sake of time, I'll just go over a few here. So staff at nursing homes, hospitals, home care settings, workers at farms, food production facilities, grocery stores, restaurants, janitors and sanitation workers, truck drivers, transit staff, warehouse workers, public health and safety staff, childcare workers, educators, and other school staff, again, as Holly mentioned, as long as they were not working remotely, and social service and human services staff. And so again, I'll post this to the ARPA website that is linked into the mayor's page.
Thank you. This is, we only have a couple more. This is more of a statement than a question. I think it's very important to use these funds for water and sewer infrastructure for long-term improvements of the city. And we're going to capture all of the feedback and just like the survey, capture all of the information so we can present it to the mayor, council, whomever whenever they need it to make their decisions. Last question, unless somebody else has any others. Could we use the funds for youth programs or a youth center? And I think, I'm sorry? Okay, I think Holly and Lindsay kind of hit on that. There are certain allowables for this money specifically. But like I said, I think there are lots of different buckets of money coming open. But if you guys want to hit on this ARPA money specifically, because.
Yeah, it's hard to answer that specific of a question, because a lot of the times, unfortunately, the answer is it depends. It sounds broadly, it probably would be able to fit into a category, but we didn't go into the technical underlyings of a lot of this, but there are stipulations within those buckets. You have to be able to demonstrate connectivity to that you're responding to the pandemic, which, as we all know now, is easy to do because it affected all of our lives across a lot of vast ways. So I would say on high level, it sounds like it would probably be an allowable use, but we would just have to know more information specific to, surrounding that, what area of the community it's in, who were those impacted by it, how much, depending on how much it costs, you have to demonstrate that there was proportional response to the pandemic, or that the damages caused by the pandemic or the response is proportional to those. So again, we didn't dive into a lot of the technicalities, but that kind of ties back into the fact that these are federal funds, there are strings attached. So while these are the broad categories, there are restrictions within those, I would say, that you do have to demonstrate certain things to be able to use the funds for very specific things like that.
And there are other, but like I said, there are other programs under the infrastructure bill and Inflation Reduction Act. I know community centers are under, I think, infrastructure. There's lots of money. The feds are still, because all this is so new, the feds are still writing the rules for a lot of these programs that haven't even come down yet. It's just, we know a lot because we've looked into lots and lots and lots of the fine print, and the acts that are out there, about 1,700 pages long each. So if you get bored and you want to put yourself to sleep, I'd encourage you to go read some of it. But there are lots of, different pockets for opportunity for lots of communities. And every community is going through this, every city, same size, larger, smaller, all going through all of this right now. The same processes, trying to get things fixed as quickly as possible.
Samantha, we have a speaker that's been waiting a while on Zoom, so if you don't mind, we'll take a break and allow him to speak via Zoom. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Is I am on board?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
This is
good morning.
Director Jamal. He's our Director for Community and Economic Development in the
Yes,
city.
I actually was involved in the CFR 200 bid process to select the BNI. So to second Ms. Hernandez, yes, the process was done according to CFR 200. I actually put the bid together, so that's responding to one of the questions. You did a good job. I mean, your presentation is very informative. I can't say better or more. Dearborn Heights, just correction to what Ms. Samantha stated. We received our money security administration because we are under the CDBG allocation, which fund, we are metropolitan cities.
By broadband.
So we are not actually under the state. So we don't follow the state regulatory. We follow direct metropolitan cities since we are independent from the state. Now, can we cooperate with the county? Can we cooperate with the state? Absolutely, we can do that. The team, in Dearborn Heights are doing a great job to do cooperation and collaboration with other funding, which is some of it in process in the millions of dollars, and some are also coming. Of them, the mayor and our engineering department. As we speak right now, and too many other opportunities that will bring a lot of different type of influx of funding, federal funding and state funding to actually support or supplement or complement this few $1 million, of ARPA fund. $24 million compared to the county $300 million. It's not that significant amount to what ourselves here in Dearborn Heights are working on. It just the engineer and the mayor just finished putting together with our consultant $35 million, a loan / a possible grant. So we are equipped at this time to work with you to together put and see what we can do to better off the city of Dearborn Heights. Thank you. Good present.
Thank you very much.
I am sorry I wasn't able to be there with the three of us, myself. I had another, things to do in the mall. And other issue that I have with spending other. I know about Ms. Stefanski. She's great. Wish her good luck, and we can work together very well.
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you, we appreciate that. Okay, who has the questions down here? Okay,
I just had a statement. I've lived in the city of Dearborn Heights for, there you go. As you can see, we need the IT help.
Not IT.
Good morning. I am Chris Sullivan Rathwell. I've lived in the city of Dearborn Heights for over 60 years. One of the things I have observed is that every piece of land and every piece of property has been built upon in the last 50, 60 years. And so our sewer and infrastructure hasn't always been upgraded to meet the fact that the building development has occurred. Therefore, rainwater doesn't always have a place to go. So I really am emphatic, and when at home, when we got something like this, I always told the kids it was pennies from heaven. So this is probably not going to come very often. So that's why I'm so emphatic in that the long-term solutions of using this money to address the issue of capacity of our sewer systems, even citywide, is very important because of the development of the housing and businesses in our community have taken up the space where rainwater could drain. And so that's my issue, and that's one of the reasons why I'm really happy your presentation as well. Mayor Bezzi, I think you hired a great group, and you have some good staff here who know what they're doing. So I'm appreciative of that, too. Thank you.
We're hiring if you're interested. So, to answer your questions, this is actually not just Dearborn Heights issue. So the money, I just want to clarify, the money from the Wayne County, the $10 million, is not just for Dearborn Heights. The money is going to be for non-communities that are affected by the Ecorse Creek. So I just want to be clear on that one. So this is something, a lot of mayors been working with the county. And I know for 2 years, this is something we've been working with. And so the water sewer issue, I mean, we know it's a problem. I mean, I knew it was a problem probably like 20 years ago. And one of the biggest problems the city had is that we never had a city engineer, representing the city. And this is something that I realized, when I became the mayor 2 years ago. And that's why I brought in Mr. Deeb. Mr. Deeb has been looking at a lot of the infrastructure. He's been, there was, to be honest, there was no maps to tell us where some of these water, sewers, there's no maps, there's nothing. So he's kind of working from scratch, trying to map, where our issues are. And, where we have these companies going in and checking, where we have an issue with water backup, they're going there, they camera that area. And something, I don't want to talk about the past, but in the future, we're mapping everything. We're looking at all the issues. And as I mentioned before, we have our elected officials from the state, they're really trying to help. This is something, we have like 2 meetings a month that I go to, the DCC, the DUA meeting, the downriver, mayor supervisors, and also the CWW, the Conference of Western Wayne, the mayors from mayors, township supervisors. So everybody is having similar issues, but Dearborn Heights has got, basically, we're at the low end. So everybody's water comes through us, but when Dearborn Heights hits the most, that it kind of backs to Taylor. It gets, Allen Park gets it, Dearborn, part of Dearborn gets it, obviously us, Taylor, and also Romulus, but that's when we get it the most. So when we had the big issue with the flooding about 1.5 years or so back, a lot of cities in the area were really hit. I mean, it hit all the way, Canton was hit. So this is something that everybody's working on, and I was in a meeting about 1.5 years ago with state officials, all the mayors and supervisors from Wayne County. Wayne County executive was there, congressional delegates were there, and this is the issue that everybody's talking about, is the aging infrastructure, aging sewers. So it is a topic that everybody's talking about, and we're really working hard. And, Mr. Deeb, he's highly respected, he worked for the county first, and he worked for the airport. Was the chief engineer there. So everybody knows who he is, and when he speaks, everybody's listening, like, hey, these are the issues. So we are working on that issue, and this is something we're taking very serious because, we do have a solution. It's gonna take money, and I hope it raise more pennies, or help raise more than just pennies. So we have, everybody's attention right now, because FEMA is giving us, we have to apply for FEMA grants that Mr. Jamal is working on, try to buy some of these homes off the Ecorse Creek. We do have a plan for these homes. Once we get them demolished, we're gonna try to do kind of a detention basins over there, rain gauze, whatever we can do to retain the water, to eliminate or to prevent as much water going into the Ecorse Creek. So we do have a solution. We just need the money, just need time. So we are working on it. It's work in progress. And I tell you, there's a lot of work is being done. There's a lot of stuff in works right now. It just, we just need the money, and we'll see what happens with this ARPA, but we have the 10 million for the 9 communities. Then also there's other money that we're trying to get from the state. I talked to the Mr. Asad Turfi yesterday from Wayne County, and they're gonna try to help us to talk to the governor, see if we can get more money than just the 10 million, and just get money allocated just for the city of Dearborn Heights. Try to put some retention walls on the Ecorse Creek. So there's stuff we're working on.
Thank you. And I know we're nearing the end of our time together here. I think we have a couple of questions. Okay, yep, can I ask?
Council Chair.
Okay,
Dale Abdallah, he's the council chair.
okay,
And there's Nancy Breyer, she's also on the city council.
yep, we did.
Oh, you did?
Good morning. The question that I have for you, and this is no reflection on this particular city, this is more of a generic question, but as you know, a lot of times when money is allocated to different entities nationally, to municipalities, counties, et cetera, the question I have, what about oversight? So once this is decided, whether it's through surveys, through what you guys do, through us as a council body and as a administration decide, who's going to be the oversight? Will it be the federal government that will oversee to make sure that those projects are done properly and the money's allocated properly and no fat is lost? Or will it be your particular organization? Who will do oversight? And the reason I'm bringing this up because, and I don't want to say specific names or places, whatever, but I know of money that was allocated at one point somewhat locally, and unfortunately there's been a lot of either criticism or debate whether that money was used properly and whether a lot of money was lost. Who will be doing the oversight?
I think it's a couple of different, depending on where the money comes from. The feds, certainly, any federal dollars by law require reporting back to the feds. So if the state is a pass-through for any of the dollars that are coming down, it's reporting to the state and to the feds. And they make sure that all that stuff is, that everything is done properly, there wasn't overspending. I mean, they have very certain particular things spelled out. When they say there are strings attached, when the feds give you money, there are lots of strings attached.
Yes.
And that's why some cities, towns, municipalities don't take federal money because they don't want to deal with all the reporting and because it's quarterly, annually. I mean, there's a lot that goes on, and they can come in and audit you every single year. So we certainly will help the city with all of that, guide you through what needs to be done, to whom it needs to be reported, what is proper, what is not, what you have to tell them and what you have to release and present and all of that stuff. And, I'm an attorney. I like all y'all, but I'm not going to prison for misstating something about how money was used. So those are very real, and all the cities and states have to be very careful with how they're spending money because they both went through it as well about the reporting back through the states. And when you apply, they have a copy of what you've applied for. So the mayor here might say, hey, we need a new sewer infrastructure, but then go build a 10-story high-rise. That can't happen. That cannot happen. Mm-hmm. They will claw back all that money. That's why there's a clawback provision in all of these federal acts. So if you misuse it, if it's misappropriated, if it's not used for the intent and purpose, they can claw it back from the city or whomever they gave that money to.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we do actually, just to echo and also second what you said, we are, several times we already reported. Again, that's why we're kind of hesitant using the money the first year, is because of that, all the things that we have to do first, and that's why they came on board. We asked for them to come on board to help us. This is a huge task. Every penny, not dollar, every penny has to be accounted for. And we do, when we report, it's a very lengthy process. It takes us hours to go through the process. And we do have to periodically report to the government. And coming from the government side, before I came here, it's like no kidding, every dollar that you get from the federal government, they want to know where it's spent, and they do have audits. We have to supply documentations to them as well. So it's closely monitored by the federal government and also the state.
Mm-hmm. And just one more quick comment on that too. I was formerly a federal grant auditor for a public accounting firm. That was my 12 years. Spent 12 years in that and specialized in federal grants. So that's kind of my technical background on this project. It is subject to the federal program single audit every year that is done usually simultaneously or around the same time as the financial statement audit. And this is considered a high-risk program by the federal government and by U.S. Treasury, who has ultimate responsibility for monitoring and oversight. So this will ultimately be audited by your public accounting firm, independent auditors every year until the spending is done as well. But yeah, ultimately the U.S. Treasury has broad oversight of the program.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sure.
Back to the beginning of our meeting. I'm sorry, I could not write fast enough. So I've got hit or miss. Samantha, I did not get your last name.
DeWester, DeWester.
All right, and then I got Bemis.
Beam.
Just
Beam.
BEAM.
Yes. Longest.
Longest.
And Neff, Neff.
Okay. That is her name and the company that the city has hired that you work for.
Oh, that's good. What was
Okay.
the name of the company again?
Beam, Longest, and Neff.
Okay, thank you. And Lindsay and Holly, do you also work for BLM?
Yeah, we're, subcontractors along with,
Subcontract, so what company do you work for?
I'm independent. Yeah, I was
Okay.
actually with a public accounting firm for my background, give a little bit more of my background. I was in public accounting for 12 years, again, specialized in federal grants, a lot of technical background in single audits and compliance with federal programs.
They both are on contract with BLN.
Okay,
yes.
all right. Okay then, very good on that.
So I left public accounting about a little more than a year ago because I wanted to focus specifically
Okay.
on helping governmental
Oh,
entities. And
all right, and so when you referred in the presentation to a consulting team, that is, would be
Us.
BLM?
Yeah, yeah.
And the two of you combined make the
Yeah, well, we are
consulting-
BLN, yes. Yeah.
And the consulting team, you are the consulting team, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, great,
And the
great.
mayor
portion
mentioned
of it,
Jay
yes.
Cahill before. Jay and Mark are the vice presidents of the wing of BLN, that is Emergency Management, Disaster Recovery Response, which these programs fall under, that we handle, throughout the United States and the Caribbean, these types of programs. They're not typical civil engineering programs. They're not construction, if you will.
Okay.
We're managing to make sure that the processes go correctly to the projects that need to be constructed.
Okay, great, great. And just for the benefit of, I think, everyone in the city, all individuals concerned, the one gentleman brought up a number of $1 million, which you said was incorrect. Is there a figure, or is there a, let's say, a percentage for you to spend our 24 million? Is it going to cost us 1% of that, 2% of that? I mean, the 1 million would have been roughly 4% of the 24 million. Do you know what I'm saying here?
Right, it's a contract for services, and like Mariana said, it was on the city's website.
Okay.
I don't have the contract in front of me.
Okay.
But it's not an overarching, you have $5 million here, walk away with it. It's specific to the tasks that we complete.
Oh, okay.
So that's what
So there is a number then that
the
it's gonna
feds
cost
usually,
us?
it depends on what the feds have capped it at for different acts. It could be 10% of the total project. But again, that doesn't mean that we are getting that. We are task-based, right? So there's another engineering firm that the city works with that they do some different work. So it just depends on who is doing what piece of the puzzle.
Okay. Well, there may be a part of the public that would be interested to know how much in these consulting fees and everything else we pay out of the 24 million to get that work done for us.
Yes, we haven't paid a single invoice for them yet.
end.
But again, so there is a certain amount of money that we could use for administrative fees. Every project that we do requires different consulting firms. We have some in-house, we have some that we would have to go external. It really just depends in when it comes down to making the decision of what type of projects we're going to do and how much we're going to be utilizing BLN. For now, they're on contract primarily to get the results from the residents and help us plan the priorities and augment the funds by utilizing other sources that we have. So they've also been in communication with Funding Scout, which is our new grant contracting company who's helping us track all the available grants in engineering and police and fire, et cetera. So again, it's going to be a collaboration of all of our consultant companies and all of our department heads and how we're going to develop those projects. We're still in the very beginning stages of it, but absolutely the public will be notified every single time. And all of our claims, as usual, are public knowledge. So they're in every single one of our council meetings for the public to review. So every single invoice, you will see it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So it's hard to say then exactly how much it costs out of the 24 million just to get things done. So.
Yeah, I think, just to clarify, so I know there was a question about the cost of the contract. I do believe it was, there was a not to exceed in there.
Okay.
But I guess to explain it a little better, part of the contract is the ARPA stuff, but a lot of it is, why there's a not to exceed amount is because it's hard to know what the total scope will be once we get past the utilization recommendations and kind of what we're doing now, because a lot of the later tasks in the project depend on what the funds are ultimately allocated for. So it's very well that, after, depending on what the funds are ultimately used for, we may or may not be needed to assist with compliance, or it could be more complex if depending on what projects are selected. So that's why it's more of a not to exceed scoped contract than
Instead of a-
task-based.
Right,
Exactly.
instead of a hard
Than not a
number.
flat fee,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
to Sam's point, it's, in the sense that it's task-based, you're only gonna pay us for the projects that we help you do and what we're doing now. We're not gonna just charge a, blanket fee and.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Oh.
All right, we are running a little short, we're a little bit over on time. I'm gonna,
I'm sorry, I just have to piggyback on his question. What was the amount the city council approved for this type of job and the contract which went out for bid?
I can't recall again, I'm sure it was. I can't recall. I believe it was a not to exceed amount. Again, each person, depending on their level of expertise, has a different hourly rate. So I can certainly give you the copy of the contract again.
Can I
and you
ask
could request
Mr.
it from the
Jamal
clerk's office.
if he's still on Zoom since he wrote it, how much was the number he wrote?
If he remembers, absolutely, he's there and he has
He's
his
the
hand
one who
raised.
remember, he's the one who,
Yeah, if he
who
remembers,
writes this
absolutely, he's
All
right
right,
there.
can we-
Mr. Jamal.
just because the Zoom link is bad, it keeps dropping, can we just make, that should be online, we'll make it public to you, we'll make sure you get it. I don't want to hold this whole group up for that, just the contract purposes.
I understand your time is valuable, our time is valuable too. And this is money for the resident and we need to know where it's going.
Well, and we've answered that, sir. We've answered it repeatedly in several different ways. So we're just trying to get this. I know folks want to know how the money will be spent and on what. So, sir, your question is water and sewer. What do infrastructure upgrades look like? Larger pipes, natural water retention with greenery, dredging, Rouge, and Ecorse Creek. So, well, it could be, there's a lot of that. I know specifically, especially with Michigan, the state passed, as I'm sure you guys know, a law that says everybody must be lead pipe free over the next, 20 years. So I know Mariana and Mr. Dibb have been laser focused on lead replacement, lead line replacements, service line replacements, meter replacements to upgrade that for the community. They are also keenly aware of, and so am I, of Ecorse Creek and the continual flooding, and the mayor just referenced it as he was talking, and Rouge as well. Known problem. So that, yes, the answer is yes. That's what it could all be. The main thing is to find the priority, make the infrastructure the priority, and then figure out how we can get as much money as we can from all the different monies coming down the pike. Because I'm sure, as you probably know, it's no cheap feat to replace all of that at one time. And lots of communities are, doing it. Detroit and different communities are doing it, but it takes a massive chunk of money. So I know that's what they've been working on and focused on. That's what we've been focused on as well. But thank you. Okay, is that it? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
And-
Thanks for showing
Sure,
up.
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody for questions,
Yep.
for being here. And then also, I just want to reiterate, please pass the survey on or pass the word. Take some copies. Tell your friends.
Neighbors, yeah.
Yes.
If you guys want to
friends,
share it on
neighbors.
social media, the links on the city website, please
Yep.
share on social media.
Thanks, everybody.